Hi everyone, I'm Mia here from Resonance Astrology and welcome to my channel. And if you're new here, hi, welcome to my channel. I'm a tropical astrologer and I focus mainly on ancient Hellenistic astrology, but I also blend in a mixture with modern psychological astrology. And we're back at it with the weekly overview. And I'm excited for this week because honestly, there isn't a lot going on. And I know it's weird to be excited about that, but I think it's the rest we need before the storm comes hitting when it's March, because March is a really, really big month. And this week, I will dive into the transits, but I will also focus on a few other things, especially on the ingresses from Aquarius into Pisces. Pisces season officially begins this week. And yeah, we have a few minor transits going on. Mercury is squaring Jupiter, and then we also have Mercury trining Mars. So a lot of mercurial action this week. And what this means, especially with the combination of the two elements that are very prominent right now, which is air and water, this means the focus is really on our emotions and our intellectual thoughts. And since Mercury is pretty much highlighted this week, and Mercury is the planet of communication, of thinking, of coming up with things, and also kind of being the trickster a little bit here, I think this week is kind of making us focus on our thought processes and perhaps the changing of our thought processes. I really like that Mercury square Jupiter that we're gonna get on Thursday, because it's also when we have the last quarter moon in Sagittarius. And then we enter that beautiful balsamic moon phase, which is leading us up to the beautiful new moon in Pisces, which we are going to have next week. So the week really starts off with no major transits happening. And then on Tuesday, we have the moon entering into Scorpio. The sun enters the sign of Pisces. Officially, Pisces season is beginning. And I like this start. The moon in Scorpio can sometimes be a bit intense just because the moon is in a not well dignified position there. It's said to be in its fall. So oftentimes when the moon is in Scorpio, emotions can feel a bit heavier, especially because Pluto is in Aquarius. And so the first aspect, because Pluto is at the early degrees of Aquarius, so the first aspect the moon in Scorpio is always going to form is a square to Pluto, like pretty immediately. So this is why it can be a bit extra heavy. And I think the moon is just this beautiful cycle that we can observe so well in our personal lives, because the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. So it's really something you can observe how you are feeling during these 2.5 days approximately when the moon is in a specific signs. It's a great observation starting point if you are just entering into the world of astrology. I always suggest people following what the moon is doing, because you can learn astrology so well through the moon's ingress into the sign, because it happens so quickly, and then also through the new and full moons, because it really gives you a bit of a flavor. And so the moon in Scorpio, as I already said before, is in its fall. So sometimes emotions can have a bit more tension or be a bit darker. So observe how you're feeling in this 2.5 days. It's happening on Tuesday up until Thursday, and then Thursday noon Central European time, the moon then moves into Sagittarius, which is a much lighter energy. And then we also have the sun that is moving into Pisces, which is also bringing up a bit of a lighter energy. So I wouldn't worry about that Scorpio moon all too much. If anything, Tuesday is probably like the heaviest day, but really the other days aren't so heavy transit wise. Again, this is really a week that is more chill, so to say. On Wednesday, there isn't really anything crazy going on as well. And then on Thursday, we have the Mercury square Jupiter going on. And I really like that because they are both in something we call mutual reception. And that means they are in each other's ruling sign. So Mercury is in Pisces. It's not in a good position. It's also in its fall there. And then we have Jupiter in Gemini in its detriment, also not in a good position. But which planet is Gemini ruled by? It's Mercury. And which planet is Pisces ruled by? At least in a traditional rulership sense, it's Jupiter. So they form a mutual reception. And this is a very, very good thing, because that square that can usually bring in tension, I think can then bring in positive resolution, especially when it comes to how we have been thinking and communicating. Mercury and Jupiter have a lot to do with our belief systems and the way we shape our worldviews, the way we create the worlds in our head and then in reality. And then, as I also mentioned in the beginning, we have that last quarter moon in Sagittarius. So I think it's a really good day, Thursday of next week, to propel things further that probably happen around the Leo full moon and really step into this new role more, because the Leo full moon really, I don't know how you guys felt, you can tell me, but in my personal life and the people that I've observed around me, this Leo full moon really gave us a kick in the ass to like step up for ourselves and take up the space and feel worthy for who we are. And so I think on Thursday, this day is not necessarily a turning point, but just more of a point that propels whatever has happened on the Leo full moon a bit further. On Friday and Saturday, we also don't really have anything going on. On Sunday, the moon moves into the sign of Capricorn, where it's also not doing too well. Also usually a moon that can be a bit more heavy, but I also like it in the regards that it's a good and responsible and usually a more emotionally mature moon to really do out and get things done. And then what we also have on Sunday, we have Mercury trining Mars in Cancer, and this is interesting because Mars is just about to station direct again. And this whole week really feels like the build-up for Mars to station direct again. It's happening on Monday, technically, but so it belongs to the week afterwards. But really, Mercury is gonna trine Mars in Cancer at 17 degrees, which is exactly the degrees that Mars is preparing to station direct again. So there is like this final realization, especially because both are in the water signs, which is so much about our emotional world and our sensory world and the memories that are stored inside our bodies. So I think Sunday is such a great day to wrap up this chapter of the Mars retrograde with Mercury trining. A trine is a positive aspect, so I really like that this is going on. It feels like this final realization that we need for this Mars retrograde cycle, or this aha moment. And after that, Mars stations direct and we go over everything once again. So I really like the note we're ending this week on. I'm a big fan of this week. Again, as I said, I think it's the calm before the storm, because already next week things are amping up and the eclipse season is around the corner. March is packed with two void of course moons. We have Venus going retrograde. We have Mercury going retrograde. First of all, sorry, my camera just moved. I might be a bit out of frame right now. I just wanted to make sure to say everything that is going on in March. We also have Neptune moving into Aries, a monumental shift. And of course, the yearly spring equinox is when the sun moves into Aries and the new astrological year begins. So March is a fully packed month, and I really enjoy this week of a bit more chillness. Of course, things are going on as always, and so many things obviously depend on how they're aspecting your natal chart, because just because the transits are quiet does not mean that you are not getting any sort of major transits from the planets in your personal chart. This is the reason why you go to an astrologer, because what I'm doing right now is more like a basic overview of the week, but how it's affecting you personally, we only know that if we see your birth chart. But because this is a bit too brief for me, I actually want to talk a bit more about, I guess you could even call it going a bit into evolutionary astrology, even though personally I'm not the biggest fan of evolutionary astrology, and I have my reasons, but this is story time for another time. But there are many aspects of it that I find very interesting, and especially the shift from Aquarius into Pisces season, which I want to highlight a bit more because we have more time to talk about other things since the transits aren't so crazy this week. Next week's video will be a lot longer. And I want to bring in the fact that February is a month of cleansing and purification. And I think we see this so well in the symbolism of Aquarius and of Pisces, which are both the seasonal rulers of February. And now let me just look on my computer because I don't want to butcher this. February comes from the Latin word febra, which means to cleanse. The month was named after the Roman Februalia, which was a month-long festival of purification and atonement. And now let's look at both of the signs. What Aquarius and Pisces have in common is that they both have something to do with water. Obviously, Pisces is a fish, and it's a water sign. And interestingly enough, Aquarius often, by people that don't know astrology so well, Aquarius, aqua, water. So people always confuse Aquarius to be a water sign when it is in fact an air sign, but that does not mean it does not have anything to do with water. As a matter of fact, Aquarius, the full name of Aquarius is called Aquarius the water bearer. So while it's not a water sign, it definitely has to do with the element of water in and of itself. And it's bearing this water, which is a very Saturnian thing to do. This is also why Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. It has a lot to do with the sacrifices we do and the purifications we undertake. And it's very interesting because I have realized that a lot of people tend to decide to go sober or do a dietary change or do some sort of fasting and cleansing during the month of February. And I really don't think this is a coincidence because even the name of February means to cleanse. And I think this is really where this Saturnian archetype comes in because Saturn has a lot to do with setting boundaries and saying no. It's not about saying yes, it's about saying no. But saying no can be so, so powerful. And when you decide to go on a more spiritual pursuit, this path has a lot to do with abstaining from certain things out of your own free will. So saying no to certain worldly pleasures for a moment of time or for a longer period of time. Saturn has to do with melancholy, with pondering, with deeply thinking about certain things. The Saturnian symbolism, the Saturnian archetype has a lot to do with asceticism. And asceticism is really the severe self-discipline to say no and not indulge in certain worldly pleasures and activities. Because there is a lot of things that can be learned when we consciously decide to abstain from certain things. If you think of these cleansing rituals in whatever way, there's so many of them. You don't see the immediate results the first day you start doing a cleanse or a fast or whatever. It's a few days afterwards, and depending on how long you're going, it's also taking a real big toll on your mental health and how you deal with certain things. So it's really not to be underestimated, the whole process of abstaining from certain things. And in a way, it's really this higher spiritual pursuit, which when we switch to the sign of Pisces, this is where we land. It's like we have to cleanse ourselves first with the water so we can learn to swim in the water, so we can be the fish learning to swim in the water. And I've also been thinking of bathing rituals because water in and of itself as an element has always been deeply associated with cleansing and purifying. And there's, for example, I sometimes go to a hammam that is nearby me, and this tradition is from Turkey. It's like a bathhouse, or you can also think of Japan as the onsen. When I was in Japan, I was going to onsens quite a few times. And first of all, interestingly enough, Aquarius is associated with communities, and you usually do that in a community. It's not so often that you do it alone. I know you can do it alone, but there's often people around you also doing that in bathhouses. And what you do first before you get into the water or go into a sauna or something like that, you pour water over yourself. You cleanse yourself. You become the water bearer. Like that gesture of pouring water over you or somebody else pouring water over you is embodying the Aquarius archetype. You are becoming the water bearer by doing that, or by you can also just take a bath. Being under a shower technically does the same effect, or even going under a waterfall when you let the water just pour over you and cleanse yourself. This is such a liberating feeling. If you've never sat or stood under a waterfall, highly recommend that. There's just something, it's interesting because when you're in a bathtub, you don't have that quality of water that is running. It's like you're in the bathtub and the water is already there. It's not really doing anything But a shower, or again, taking a bucket and pouring it over you, this is running water. It has a different effect. So if you have the time and energy, highly recommend doing bathing rituals in the month of February while it's coming to an end. And if you have some sort of bathhouse near you, even better, please do so. There are also bathing rituals you can do in your bathtub if you have one, if you have the luxury of having one. I luckily have the luxury of having one, and I love taking baths. And you can do so many ritualistic baths where you cleanse your space first and you consciously put in certain minerals, salts, whatever, flowers, or you do a steep of certain herbs and then pour it in the water. There's so many things you can do, and I really want to invite you, especially in this week that is a bit more quieter when it comes to the transits, to let yourself be cleansed by the waters in whatever way. If you don't have any access, even just listening to water sounds can be so helpful and useful. And then we enter Pisces season, which is now we have cleansed ourselves, now we begin to swim. Now we can step in to that more spiritual version of ourselves because we have first consciously cleansed ourselves. And this is this really interesting evolution from Aquarius into the sign of Pisces, where it's almost like Aquarius, like the water that it bears represents the waters where the Pisces then can swim in. So they are deeply connected to one another. And the month of February really shows that. I mean, all the last 3 signs are really special, but it's like I can't really say that because every sign is special and unique in its own way, and I love all signs, okay? But there's this, what I found really interesting about the season of the winter, at least here in the northern hemisphere, is that both of these seasons, it's the only season that has both Saturn signs consecutively ruling it, which is also why winter oftentimes feels so long, or the month of January and February feels so long, because it's Saturn after Saturn. And then at the end, we get this beautiful, mutable sign of the fish of Pisces really wrapping it up. And if you do live in the northern hemisphere, you might have already noticed, if you went outside, I certainly noticed, there are already first signs of spring in the air, like the first few flowers and herbs peeking through the ground. And yeah, it's interesting to observe that, but I'll leave it at that for now. I think I just wanted to make this a bit more interesting and bring in some lore as well, not just speak of the transits. So if you have found this interesting, please leave a like, leave a comment, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and also make sure to follow me on Instagram. There's quite a lot of things I post on there which I don't post on YouTube, so make sure to follow me on there. And also shout out to Aid, which I just did the 9th house episode with. It's released on my channel. Make sure to check it out. I've upgraded this 9th house episode quite a lot. There's an intro and an outro now and other things that are so cool, and it has just been such a nice journey witnessing myself grow and all the guests I have had on until now. There's still 3 more houses to go. We have the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th house to go through. But it has been such a fun series, and there's many plans I have for next year, if I'm allowed to say them. There will be something about the decans, okay? So we're gonna focus more again on the zodiac signs. And if you don't know, the decans are sort of intersections of the zodiac sign. So Aries, like the first 10 degrees of Aries, the middle 10 degrees of Aries, and the last 10 degrees of Aries all have a different planetary ruler, and these are kind of called the decans to keep it briefly. But this is, yeah, stuff about the decans are coming out, so I'm super excited about that. And again, so many fun projects. I'm probably also going to do more personal story sharing, because while I love talking about astrology, there's so many personal stories I also want to bring out and put out there. So make sure to subscribe to this channel to be updated and follow me along my journey and have weekly updates on astrology and other transits. And I'm gonna see you next week when you tune in again of the astrology of the week ahead. But bye for now. I wish you a lovely week ahead.